Okay, that's looking a lot better. Thanks for joining us this morning, and coming to the March webinar. And we're excited to bring you the second edition of the ASK webinar series here. The first edition we did the evolution of security, and if you missed that one, well, I think revisit that one a little bit down the road and do that one more time. We got some great constructive criticism from the folks out there who attended the webinar. Really appreciate that. We're trying to make these for an all audience. I know that's a tough thing to do. We got some really technical folks here. I work with many of you, and I know you guys are really technically talented folks, and you're going, hey, when is our good stuff coming for the technically talented folks like us? So as we craft these things, we'll start to modify, hopefully get something that might be a little bit more in-depth technical. This webinar on phishing, obviously, a lot of folks out there will say, well, I'm pretty comfortable in what I know about it, but I think there's a few things in here that when we get started will be helpful to you. I know they were to me, and I've been in the IT industry now for coming up on about 15 years. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised in what you see here today. So once again, it's Eric Jacobson, and I'm with Josh Gambala, ASK ESS Manager. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning, Eric.
Thank you for joining me again on this webinar and sharing some of your insights here. Daily basis, ASK, we're confronted with compromised mailboxes, malicious software in people's mailboxes, man in the mailbox attacks. If you don't know what that is, we'll talk a little bit about that in this edition of the webinar series. So it's really important that we put this together. We are trying to make an all-out effort here to educate our client base, help you guys out in the field, in the industry, and if we can get any information to you that helps your users, not click on something that they shouldn't, then we'll feel like we've done a good job. So
yeah, our security customers submit phishing emails to us, so we see up to 60 unique email phishing campaigns a day through submissions that we run through our malware sandbox and track down go through the headers and check the URLs and decipher what the purpose of them is. So we have a lot of experience with phishing emails and with very new phishing emails.
Yeah, and I just see you guys in the activity that you have going on in the security team room during the day, and even just this morning, it's just things like I had an issue with my own laptop that was detected by our security team. No, I wasn't doing anything naughty, guys out there. I know you're going, Eric, what are you doing surfing the web going over it? But no, seriously, it was an alert that came through. One of the first things you guys check, to make sure everything is okay, is just whether or not I had received a number of emails, that type of thing. So that was really cool to find out I'm safe, everything's good. But it's one of those things that kind of gets a little scarier. Like, maybe I did click on something I shouldn't have clicked on. I can't be doing that.
It's easy to do, unfortunately.
Well, again, a little bit about the company, just so you know where we're coming from. We're 25 years in business here. I think it's a little bit more than that now, 26. We just moved into our new facility. I saw a number of you, I think, attending the webinar yesterday at the Capital Area IT Council, which was really cool. So thanks for coming on in and checking out the building. Looking forward to seeing you guys in the future. So we're over here at Moores River Drive Elementary School in Rio Town. We got a basketball court, we got lockers, we got small toilets, you got everything over here. So come on and visit us. We'll give you the tour of the building. But no, it's great. We love the neighborhood. It's been really welcoming to everyone here at ASK. A lot of thanks go out to Elevate Marketing Company for helping us get set up for these webinars. We're using Microsoft Teams today, which is really cool. We're excited about that. I'm getting used to the interface and how to do webinars using Teams. That's new to me, and I really, so far, finding it to be pretty cool. I just want to make sure moving forward we get the calendar stuff a little bit more in sync, and we're working on that. So thanks for bearing with us on that if you had any issue with it. A couple house cleaning items too. If you are joining anonymously to this, you can private message. I think a private message goes to me with your name and your information. I want your name and your email so we can get you an Amazon gift card for joining today. Or you can email me. My contact information will be at the end of this webinar. There's a Q&A section on the right, which is kind of, it's pretty synonymous with webinars and things like that, but Teams, it might be a little bit different, but it's on the right-hand side there, and I have a little announcement there, so that's where you want to, put you can send any questions my way during this. Josh and I we'll do our best to pay attention to that. Another cool thing, ASK's got our March bracket challenge going on, so if you want to fill out a bracket for the NCAA tournament, head to our Facebook page. I think there's some cash rewards for the winners of those too. And I've had a number of clients win those over the years, and it's they got bragging rights over me. So, you know, you got to keep doing that. And I think we had maybe 80 to 100 people or something like that last year. So that was really cool. Head on over there to check that out. The next webinar in April, we have it titled right now, Crypto What? And emphasis on what, because a lot of people out there, cryptocurrencies, crypto mining, you name it. Crypto ransomware. We're going to cover that in a little bit more detail and talk about what you can do to protect your business from those types of things. So join us for that. I think we'll have the link, if I'm not mistaken, the link to the register for that will be at the end of this. So a lot of folks at the first webinar said, hey, where is the second webinar link? And we switched platforms, we switched to Teams. I think we have that link at the end of this. So take a look out for that. And again, if you're interested in it, you can always just email me at the end of this presentation. So let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit more about phishing here. Like I said, we're going to cover, everything in between. So
it's a wide range of topics.
Wide range of different examples that we've given. And Josh and I will actually talk a little bit about the different types of experiences we've run into working here at ASK in our day-to-day that might, help you guys even additionally to this as we go through the webinar. So, basically we're going to talk about what is phishing, how you catch phishing, cloud security. I get this question all the time. So Office 365, spam, that type of thing. What's going on with that? How come I'm getting a lot of spam emails from Office 365? What can we do about it? And what can we do in the settings? What can we do about those types of things? And current trends, I think that's important to understand too, because you always have to kind of actively be involved in this. We do a podcast on the Michigan Business Network called Bottom Line IT. And I know we were just doing a segment, Mike Maddox, president of ASK, and I do the show. Josh is on the show. He does a security segment. And we were just talking about the UPS, FedEx emails again, coming back around again, like that wasn't a thing before, but
Yeah, hey, if it still works.
People are still using that one. It's tried and true. So we just talked about that one recently, not too long ago. So let's break it down. What's a phishing email?
Yeah,
Josh?
It's pretty simple. I mean, a phishing email is going to be an email that's disguised to look legitimate. It can literally come from anyone, whether the source has been made to look like it came from a specific place but didn't, or whether it legitimately came from someone that at this point, you really can't trust who the sender is definitively until you take a couple other steps. And it can look like anything. We see them from the very simple, where they're just a couple sentences. We see old school phishing campaigns like the UPS and FedEx that Eric just mentioned, all the way up to some of the newer techniques, things like PhishPoint or the phish forms, which we'll go into what exactly those are.
Okay, well, exactly. I mean, the more examples we can share, the better, and I think that's what we're going to try to do here a little bit. Just bear with us real quick. Had a couple emails come through, messages come through. We're just tweaking the audio again. Once we get that dialed in, we'll be all set. So looking for commonalities, like you mentioned, familiarity. I see a lot of the spoofing emails lately. So it's a lot of my clients. I'll see their emails come through. It's them, but the domain is wrong. But right. Then you'll see the ones with the domain that is correct. That is correct. Yeah. Which that could be a little confusing for the end user population out there. And so we'll talk through that a little bit as well too.
There are things you can look for though. So some common items that you can use to determine whether something is actually a phishing email. Things like generic greetings, incorrect sender address, and don't be worried about the list. We'll give you some examples in a few minutes here of some phishing emails that we've put together so you can see what these actually look like in practice. Incorrect recipient address, or something that's wrong in the to field. Suspicious links in the email, and we have some great examples of those. Links that don't match the hover. It's always good to hover your mouse over top of a link before clicking on it so you know where it's actually taking you to, because the text doesn't necessarily have to match the destination. Look for things like familiar brand associations that may not match up with what the email is. So, you don't really get faxes from Dropbox necessarily, or SharePoint. Suspicious attachments, spelling and grammar errors, or an unreasonable sense of urgency, something like your email account's going to be disabled if you don't follow some type of instructions within the next 15 minutes or 12 hours or 24 hours.
Right. I mean, obviously that sense of urgency is huge. That's something that we get a lot of calls on people who submit the phishing emails to ASK. They're usually sending them in mainly because of spoofing. I think that's the biggest thing. But obviously there's things like you said, brand awareness, like Office 365, other things like that people are used to seeing that are coming internally.
Right.
And we've seen some really clever tricks with those types of emails.
Almost exact replicas. So I mean, this is a good example here. It's not a lot of content in there. They've sent it to a specific individual. That part at first glance looks like it might be okay. They need you to confirm your account, and if you go ahead and hop ahead one more here, what we'll see is that there are some pretty good items in here that you should have been able to detect relatively quickly, like the incorrect domain, that generic greeting in there. Instead of it actually having his name in full, it just uses the abbreviation from his email address. And then it has the suspicious link, which you can see in more detail. If you hover your mouse over top of it, will actually show where it's going to go.
Yeah,
I think it's on the next slide.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There it goes. So this is what we're talking about for mouse hovers. It says confirm account, but when you hover over top of it, it obviously would take you to a page that is not associated with Microsoft in any way. So what do you think? I mean, if we go past that to more complex ways of detecting them, the sense of urgency and requiring you to take some action. Those are items you can get from reading the email before interacting with the link. I mean, you can see, you won't be able to use your email. Just follow the instructions below. So those are pretty easy ways of detecting. Here's a common brand, LinkedIn. Everyone gets LinkedIn emails. If you look at this email, you can probably already see that there's a couple things wrong with it. And here's where you would be looking. So a missing to field, something that should be suspicious automatically. A familiar brand that's not necessarily associated with the body of the email. You've got your same problem with the mouse hover over there, and you've actually got it in two places here. So click here to log in, and then that's definitely not LinkedIn.
Well, there we go. There's not three eyes in LinkedIn, right? I don't know. Microsoft can make some fails from time and time again, but they're not going to misspell that.
So this is a great email because now what we have is an attachment. We have a very common brand. We have a SharePoint in this case, a brand that's not necessarily associated with what this email contains, which is allegedly a fax. It has a suspicious sender address. It's asking you to take some action. It's asking you to take it urgently because you only have a short amount of time before it's no longer available. This is kind of your ideal example of a phishing email. It has all of the telltale signs. And this is, if you have a small organization and you want to train your employees and you're not using a tool or don't have some type of education in place, it doesn't take much work to put together a slide like this. Take a phishing email that your organization has received, point out what all of the items are that people should have been able to detect, and use this as a good way for your employees to learn how to detect phishing emails.
And we could send you a copy of this presentation too if you send us a message, and that way you'll have one already done for you. Talk a little bit about email behavior, attachments and links inside of emails. I get a lot of questions on what can we do to help mitigate some risks in these areas? What does Office 365 offer? That type of thing. Hopefully that's a good segue here on these upcoming slides.
Yeah, so no matter what, you need to be looking at emails for clues of phishing. But in reality, changing your behavior and changing the way that you interact with emails and training people to think differently about the emails that they receive is going to produce better results. And what I mean by this is asking yourself some questions. So if you receive an email and it contains a link or contains an attachment, one, does it make sense that it contains it? If it's from someone that you're familiar with, is it a person that would normally be sending you a link or attachment? So the example we use is a vendor. You know, let's say that there's a vendor that you normally get an invoice from by mail that all of a sudden sends you a request to, you know, pay a bill with an attachment and a link in the email. That's one of those things you're going to want to verify. You're not just going to want to assume that that's legitimate, because compromising a vendor's email account and using it to target their customers is a great phishing scam right there. Alternative access options. So if it is a vendor you normally pay online, you don't ever have to use the link that's included in the email. Nothing stops you from manually browsing to their website, logging in like you normally would, and then just, you know, paying that invoice. We really encourage people not to be putting their credentials into websites that they arrive at by clicking on a link in an email, especially one that may be somewhat suspicious. And then, can you authenticate the email? If you do believe that it's suspicious, you know, can you contact the person that sent you that email to confirm it? And when I say contact them, I don't mean hit reply, because there's a thing called man in the mailbox, where a business email compromise is actively monitored by an attacker, and they have no problems replying to the email and telling you that it's legitimate. In those cases, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to actually contact them via phone usually, and make sure that it's legitimate. And then after you've done those behavioral changes, you still need to be looking for phishing clues. Once you get used to doing this, you can do it relatively quickly, and we found that people are pretty good at being able to repeat the process every time and do so successfully. Not all phishing emails are created equal, though. Some of them contain links, some of them contain attachments, other ones are just spoofed.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing that we see in managing, you know, some of our clients here at ASK and managed services in general. I mean, you have a lot of people out there going, all right, what am I doing here? I get this email from my CEO, and it looks like it's coming directly from them. Right. Even the domain is the same in many cases. And I think what's happened over time is that these email addresses have been pulled off websites. They've been pulled off, you know, any other pieces of information they got out of
large
breaches,
yeah.
You know, and they tie them back to social media accounts, and then they recognize who people are who are executives or who people are in their CFOs and what they, you know, who's authorizing what.
Yeah, I mean, we've even seen them go as far as to monitor social media of specific targets and then use opportune times like travel, conference attendances, you know, when they know that it's going to be hard for you to verify someone's identity, to send out a spoofed email that requests something like an invoice to be paid, a new vendor to be set up, for someone to go out and buy gift cards. I mean, everyone's heard of the iTunes gift card scam. Go out and buy me, you know, a couple $100 worth of iTunes gift cards, scratch the backs off, take pictures of them, send them to me, or, you know, take those numbers and send them over to me. The one that we've seen a lot really recently, and as of, I think, the 16th of actually this month, there was a new campaign that targeted Deloitte customers in Canada. And it was sending them information that looks like it was tax info. Mm-hmm. And I mean, just a relatively innocuous email, but just a new campaign. Changing billing details is a really important one to watch out for now, because we've seen a huge uptick in this, where they'll want you to change the routing numbers for a vendor or something similar. And then there's just the, you know, communicating ahead of time. So if you get the email that you know, says, you know, hey, are you available right now? Or, you know, are you available to run an errand? Those spoofed emails are just checking to make sure that there's someone on the other end that they can then proceed to ask for one of the items on the left.
We got a couple of questions here. A couple of points of feedback, and we've seen the same thing. You know, I have a message here that says, you know, I've seen this in mortgage transactions. Yep. That's a huge area too. A lot of personal email used and real estate, and therefore a lot of shared passwords. people get access to the realtor's information, and then they sit inside their mailbox and wait for some, where do I wire the funds message that comes across. And so, that's a common area where people aren't actively doing anything to exploit an email box, but they're really looking to sit there and wait on a message and forward things out of that box.
Yeah, I mean, we can't just say that these are dumb guys sitting in a basement with a computer. That's not the case. I mean, they're organized. They know, where the best places to go to find large financial transactions are. And they're going to take advantage of a weak security in that process. And if it's something like emailing routing information or hijacking communication by putting sweep rules into a mailbox, that's what they do. They've been doing this for a while now. They're pretty good at it, and people have these problems every day. This isn't something that happens once in a while. It happens every day somewhere. You have to be vigilant and consistent. You can't just say, okay, Monday, I'm going to look for phishing emails. Tuesday, I'm going to take a day off. It's every email, every time you get one, the same process. If you can't tell, if you're just say, look, this is too difficult, I can't tell for one email or two emails or 5 emails, there are people that you can ask. I mean, in your own organization, you probably have an IT department that can help you with phishing emails. Even just asking someone that's sitting in your general vicinity, when you get a couple people together and they start looking at something like that, there's much less chance they're going to fall for phishing email.
Right.
And if you're one of our customers, keep submitting your phishing emails. We reply to you with let you know whether they are safe or unsafe, and we color code them. Red is bad, obviously. It's a pretty easy process, and we try to get them turned around relatively quickly. There's going to be mistakes, though. Look, let's be honest. At some point, someone's going to click on something and put their credentials into something they shouldn't, or download an attachment and enable macros on it. What's important to train is that if you do make that mistake, don't try to hide it or sweep it under the rug. Make sure that you know who you need to tell. And I would even add to this, if your organization has not trained the people that answer the phones to know who to send a phone call to if someone reports a security incident, that's going to be an issue. So if I call up your company today and say, hey, one of our customers submitted a phishing email and it looks like it came from inside your organization, and the receptionist says, okay, but doesn't know who to send me to and is never able to get that information to the right person, then you have an ongoing issue that could have been solved much sooner.
Well, that's right. I mean, and it's really important that you have a consistent end user education that's going on throughout the course of the year. Here, ASK is partnered with a company called Security Mentor. We do the training internally here. We have one a month, I think it is, something like that. Very similar, like those types of fake messages you've already sent, and you put a flag on where things are at and that kind of thing. But it just kind of keeps your awareness kind of consistent. And then again, I think, Josh, you've done a number of on-site visits to do end-user education for ESS clients of ASK, Enhanced Security Services clients as well too. So it's always a kind of a constant battle. And one of the main areas where we get a lot of questions is Microsoft Office 365 and Microsoft 365 security. I think people have this feeling about cloud services that if they're in the cloud, things are safer or could be a lot safer than if they just had on-premises Exchange server or email on-prem. So we get a lot of folks going, what can we do to help in this area? So I think this will be a big help to many people here.
So there are definitely some security, well, maybe I should, depending on what level of licensing you have for something like Microsoft 365, there are a lot of added features in there that you might not necessarily have had in past email implementations or, even for things like SharePoint or OneDrive. So alerting and alert policies that have configurable thresholds, those can be really nice for sending you notifications. spoofing protection, being able to enable that so that it's a little bit better about, stopping those CEO level spoof emails. Some really easy to deploy protections against credential theft. That would be multi-factor authentication. It's not a question of whether or not you should be using multi-factor authentication in 2019. Everyone should be using multi-factor authentication on business emails. There's no two ways about it. Link protection is one of those items that your mileage may vary. There's a little bit of a delay for some people, and it adds some complexity to some processing, but it's definitely an option. Attachment controls, so where it can actually check those attachments. And again, for some organizations, the delay is a little bit of an issue, but nothing stops you from taking and identifying who your high profile targets are within your organization and maybe putting some stronger controls in for those people. Most importantly, audit logs. Look, you get audit logs with Microsoft 365 and the Security and Compliance Center. From our perspective, that's a vast improvement over where most organizations were at when they were just using on-prem. But you can also see, 65% of phishing attacks were basically attempts at getting creds to a SaaS service. Mm-hmm. So some type of attempt to phish for credentials. And those lead to business email compromises. You can't just rely on what's baked in, though. You do still need to be looking at possible options for additional protections, whether that's tweaking of the baked-in protections or using some type of an email security product, things like Semantic.cloud or Proofpoint or Mimecast or Barracuda. If your organization is inundated with phishing emails, you might need to investigate adding that another layer on there. Education is still a great way to help, but I wouldn't say replace what Microsoft has. I would definitely say try to supplement it in areas where maybe you think that it's not catching everything. The statistics stat right now is that Microsoft's missing at least one email attack per user per day. Now they're stopping a lot, but they're obviously not stopping everything. And if you go past just those standard users, you have this big problem that I call the global admin dilemma. So a global admin is like a gold mine for credential theft. If you get the creds for someone who has global admin access, and those are not always technical people, you could really do a lot of damage and create a nightmare scenario for the client. We recommend that you always stick to the policy of one user, one account, so don't have shared global admins. And if you do have people that need global admin access, make sure that they have a dedicated account for it and that account has two-factor on it.
I think it was a little bit earlier this year when I was asking you what's the biggest trend in security, just kind of screwing around one day, and I think you said it's the year of the mail doc. It's the year of the mail doc. So obviously that is something that you see just continuing in a high level and all day. The frequency is there, and you get some really funny names for some of the things, I think.
Of course. Yeah, what would security be without fun names? So just like in 2018, maldocs are continuing to be just an ongoing problem. If you don't know what a maldoc is, that's a malicious document that's included with an email, or that an email that has a link that then takes you out to download a malicious document. Most commonly, we see what's called Emotet, and you see there that it says Emotet drops whatever. That's because Emotet does drop whatever. The campaigns change. It can drop everything from something as simple as another banking Trojan, like what Tiny Banker, I think, or some of the more complex ones. I think it was doing Ryuk at one point. it literally can be used to drop anything. It can steal local resources. It can put things on the computer. There's no end to what they can make Emotet do at this point. Stop enabling macros. I know that this is an uphill battle and I'm never going to win, but macros are really still kind of what enables this to be functional in a lot of cases. Yes, there are other exploits that are out there, but hey, let's start where we can, and stopping enabling macros would be a good spot. Fishpoint and Fishforms are very creative ways of delivering maldocs. So rather than me taking and attaching my malicious Word document to an email and sending it out to a user, instead what I can do is I can take an email account that I've already compromised, via credential theft, go to their legitimate SharePoint, and then send a link out to the individuals in their address book to download my malicious document. It's a good way of evading things like content filtering. And Fishforms was the kind of the newest iteration of this that we saw. This was using the Microsoft Forms feature of Microsoft 365 as a credential theft platform. Now, I believe that they've tried to kind of shut this down, but they were basically just collecting creds using a form that they had created on Microsoft Forms. It was very, very creative use. Those are some of the things that we commonly see. Some of the better things that we've seen recently, and from a better, I mean more advanced, would be something like an interactive sandbox evasion. Let me explain what I mean. You get an email and you open up this email. Once you're in that email, you open up an attachment and you click on a link in this attachment that takes you to another website. So initially, there's nothing wrong with that email itself or with that attachment. It's taking you out to a website that then will perform some type of malicious activity, whether it's a compromised website. But all of these interactive sandbox evasions by themselves, the emails and the attachments are pretty innocuous. It's until you get to like a certain level of interaction with them that they actually start to do anything malicious. So one that we saw that was very creative is it didn't actually do anything malicious until you click submit. So it was just normal, and then once we hit submit, we saw that it actually called out to a server in a foreign country.
Well, in some cases that you're kind of stuck with maybe having things like macros enabled. We got some questions here too about like if you're in the legal industry,
right?
That's an uphill. I know you'll probably say, well, there's probably some ways to go around that, but
yeah. So I would say that sure. All right, you may have some exceptions where there are individuals that need to use macros. I would think that we should operate kind of like a firewall does by default. So by default, no one gets macros, and then you make exceptions to that rule rather than starting with everyone getting access to macros. So it just kind of the firewall concept of nothing gets in unless you create a rule to specifically allow it. I'd like to look at macros kind of the same way. There are also probably alternative solutions. Some of them, probably easier to implement than others, but these aren't going away. So we have to come up with a solution.
So that's really what we wanted to cover here today for you, and I really appreciate everybody again just kind of jumping in and joining. And we got a lot of comments and questions there too. And there's some other things here, Josh. I don't know if we got a minute here to kind of look through some of them, but enabling some different functionality. Like one of the questions I think I had earlier here too. Just let me get to the page here. It takes a little bit to navigate around here in this old Teams. There we go. There's my thing here. Enabling DKIM, I think, was one of them. And can you speak a little bit about that? And DMARC, DMARC.
So there are all, even going all the way back to like SPF records, there are all types of security that you can implement. But here's the problem. Nothing is going to honestly prevent a user from necessarily giving away their credentials And then you can exploit that relationship with a legitimate contact in order to get around all of those barriers. If it's an allowed email into the environment and it comes in, you still have to be able to determine that it's malicious. There are always going to be improvements that we can make, but really the end user and their interaction is the thing we need to, I think, focus on most closely at this point.
Right, and then when it gets into some, what happens when someone does click on the link, right? I mean, right. So then there's a whole other area. We're really talking about the front end, preparation, precaution, being proactive.
Yeah, what's your incident response after?
Incident response, and we'll hope to cover some of those in some future webinars as well too. For now, there are solutions out there. I know one specifically that we implement can ingest log data from Office 365
right.
and other places, but yeah, a little bit more complex about how that works with SIM technology and things like that. But if you have any additional questions like that, send Josh or I a message here, and we can get with you, talk to you a little bit about what those are. And I just want to quickly remind everybody we have that upcoming webinar too in April. I think I might have skipped past it here.
If they did put a question in that we didn't get to, we'll email them.
Right, and yeah, we will send you a message too, and because there's a good string of chat going here today, which is great. It was awesome participation from everybody. Thanks for joining. I know this is our first time in Teams here. So a few of you had an initial link, then got into the session a little bit later. So our apologies there. Next time this go around, we get this link. We got it all set up. We know what we're doing this time around. So thanks for that. Join our March Bracket Challenge on our Facebook page at JustAskNet, I think is our Facebook page. So head to that site. You'll be able to join that. And then we'll see you hopefully at the April webinar. In the interim, send Josh or I any messages or any questions you might have, and we'll be happy to answer them. So once again, thanks again, everybody, for joining. And we will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day.